Hey everyone, welcome to the Martial Energetics Podcast. I'm Andrew Brown, and today I'm interviewing Dane Dormio, fellow martial artist and the creator of the Martial Energetics System. So, how are you doing today, Dane?
I am excellent. How are you, Andrew?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, you're living in Nepal. How's that?
uh well, that's a big part of why I'm so wonderful. I after 36 years, I feel like I'm maybe starting to hit my stride in life a little bit, and being able
Mm.
to live more and more in alignment with my passions and spend time doing what I actually want to be doing instead of what I have to be doing. And right now, I
Mhm.
can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be right at the moment. Things are great here.
Awesome. That sounds cool. All right. Well, how'd you find yourself in that part of the world? What are you trying to do out there?
I came to Nepal to teach martial arts to kids.
Oh, that's cool, man. Why are you teaching martial arts to kids? Like, why? What do they need martial arts for?
Well, there's
That's a big
it,
question, of
yeah.
course.
There's a sort of very narrow answer and there's a very broad answer. But
Mhm.
um I was into martial arts as a kid, and
Mhm.
martial arts is one of the ways that I is a really big way that I connect with kids, and I uh, I get a lot out of training with kids. I love training with kids because they learn fast and they tire slowly, and
Mm.
um, I really feel like kids can't learn Tai Chi because they already know it, because Tai Chi is just being natural, and
Mhm.
really the Tao Te Ching says, "Be like a newborn babe." That's the most. That's kind of the most in alignment with the Tao you can be, and
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
so I get to interface with them in a very unique way, and play is a big part of it. And um, with adults, you kind of have to remove all the layers of social conditioning. That's what working with adults is mainly about: is removing the layers of social conditioning, getting back to being natural. And working with kids
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
is uh, is you just kind of get in there and have fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So you mentioned that you did martial arts when you were a kid. So how did you discover martial arts?
Well, I mean, movies, obviously.
Okay,
You
of
know,
course.
that's how everybody knows about them. Uh,
What's your favorite martial arts
and
movie, real quick?
and I don't really remember. Um, I don't really remember what the very first thing was, because
Mm.
it's way back in the midst of time. But
Mm.
I do remember that I was very enthusiastic about martial arts, and I remember what my biggest influence was, which was the Ninja Turtles.
Ah,
I,
hell yeah.
yeah, I which that dates me, no doubt. I grew up in the 1980s, and the the Ninja Turtles were just my thing. I still like
Mm.
the Ninja
Mm.
Turtles, actually. um,
Go
and
ninja, go ninja, go.
and I made all of their weapons from like stuff I found around the
Nice,
house,
nice.
and I basically wanted to be a Ninja Turtle, and
Agreed.
that I don't remember. I don't remember when that all started, but I know it was. Uh, I know I had a. I remember having. I know it was before the age of 10. One thing I remember having this martial arts encyclopedia that had that it was just like a big thick volume, and I read it from cover to cover. It basically had every kind of martial art and just what it was about, um, and I've read it several times all the way through, I'm sure. And I remember at the age of 10, the best Christmas present that I ever got so far was my parents signing me up for Taekwondo lessons. and that is what got my actual training started. At 10 years old, Taekwondo. Now I'm looking back on that from quite a distance, and I grew up in rural Arkansas, and
okay.
so this was just the local
Only
franchise
thing you had.
Taekwondo chain, right?
Yeah, totally. What style of Taekwondo? Do you remember?
Well, it was ATA. It was an ATA school.
Oh, okay, ATA.
Yeah, which is I'm sure ATA is still big all over the world.
Yeah, I took a free lesson in ATA a few months ago.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah, it's interesting.
it's strange. It's strange for me to think of doing that as an adult now, because as a kid it was a totally different experience than what martial arts is about now. It did some things that were good for me. I recognize that it's not the way I do things.
Sure.
And I feel like I've come a long way since then. But it's part of my heritage, so to speak, and definitely it got me in good shape. But there's kind of, I've read that there's this kind of window of time of age where if you're in good physical shape, if you're fit in that window of time, then you'll tend to stay fit for the rest of your life. And I got in good shape then, and I've been in good shape more or less since then. So that's definitely something that I really owe to that. And it was just it definitely fueled my interest and my desire. I did that for 4 years, and by that time I had a second-degree black belt, which
I'm talking to a black belt. Oh, that's so cool. I had no idea.
Right. Well, I actually had my first-degree black belt at 12.
Dang, that's quick.
Well, I mean that's how it works.
ATA worked.
Yeah. And
Black belt factory.
and when I was and I had a really good friend that went through the whole process with me. We met our first day as white belts, and we were really close friends all the way. And
oh, cool.
And so after 4 years, we were kind of getting interested in other things, and we discovered a school that was kind of the opposite of ATA.
Okay.
It was a local school. It wasn't a chain. It was a local school, kind of out in the boonies. It was out in Paragould, which is the town I grew up in is Jonesboro, and I'm sure nobody's heard of that. Jonesboro, Arkansas, and Paragould was a little ways out in the country from there, an even smaller town, if you can imagine that. But there's a fellow there by the name of Max Bishop who, even looking back now, I know and I can still say he was absolutely one of the deadliest human beings I've ever met. He was a former special forces operator, and he went on to train professional fighters in the years since that. But
that's cool.
He was actually, I think his main passion was horses. He had a horse ranch out there, and my friend and I from Taekwondo went in there with their ATA uniforms and thought we knew what we were about, and we thought we were all that basically. But his Max Bishop and his students showed us what was up pretty fast.
So what? Like they put you on your ass as soon as you tried to do a kick?
There are some stories I could tell about that, but basically, we found out very quickly that what we had been doing, and thought we were really good at was totally ineffective in that training environment and relative to what they were doing. And basically, it was a combat school that actually placed a lot of emphasis on grappling, which this was before UFC and competitive and grappling really took over the world of sport fighting.
What year is it right now? What year are you talking about?
So
So
this
you
would have been
met this guy what year?
1995.
Okay, got it. 1995. You met Max Bishop.
Yeah, he actually had
Okay.
trained with the Gracies, which was he taught a kind of an earlier form of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but this was before they were, before
Like
the
international.
UFC had even begun. Before
Yeah. Well,
that
UFC
wave they
launched
fought.
their brand. Their brand of martial arts was launched by UFC because they basically founded it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this was before that happened, and
Okay.
what he was. I mean, he had experience in the field as an operator, and he was really it was my first exposure to actual life or death combat, and
Yeah. I know what you mean.
yeah,
That's an interesting day.
that was what the school was focused on, and so I learned a lot of stuff from there that had a big influence on me. And when I went to college, I I was just open to whatever I could learn, and I actually went to a number of different martial arts schools in college. One thing that I found was capoeira, which I was pretty amazed. I went to college in Arkansas, in another very small town called Conway, Arkansas. But there was a guy there who was teaching capoeira, and I knew about capoeira because I had read about it in that martial arts encyclopedia I'd had as a kid, and I just thought it was amazing. That was the only way I'd heard of it, and then I found a guy who was actually teaching it, and I did that for 3 years in college, and that's something that I still love and is still very dear to my heart. I went through the baptism ritual and earned a cordao and got a capoeira name. So I still consider myself a capoeirista, and
Cool, man.
And that's something that has worked its way in with a lot of the stuff I do, especially the physical fitness component, the calisthenics component of martial energetics really borrows a lot from capoeira. And also in college, I trained with a teacher who taught Wing Chun and Eskrima kind of together in a kind of a blended system, and got a really good exposure to that, which is totally different than anything that I had done up to that point. And I also trained at a Japanese school that covered the range of Japanese fighting arts, including striking arts, grappling arts, and sword arts, as well as calligraphy.
Oh, it was like a Budo school.
It was a Budo school, right?
General martial arts school.
Yeah, it was a Bujutsu school.
Oh, Bujutsu. Okay.
Yeah, Bujutsu. So, I
did Bujinkan. You hear of Bujinkan?
Yeah, similar. Really, same family.
Yeah, it's like the alternate, the ninja versus the samurai. That's like
and a really interesting thing about Japanese martial arts is that Japanese martial arts has that whole range. I mean, it has the entire range of martial arts somewhere in it. So I was influenced by all those things, and those are some of the biggest kind of categories of martial arts: Chinese, Japanese, and Brazilian is kind of out there as an outlier. But I also tried Tai Chi when I was in college once. I went to a class.
Cool. Okay.
And
first time, huh?
Yeah, at that time I found I didn't have the patience for it.
What was your give me like a quick, like, what was your first class like? What was the first thing they tried to teach you? They want you to know.
Actually, that's a really interesting question, because I'm not sure. We probably did some forms in Qigong. I don't remember specifically, but one thing I do remember actually is there was a listening exercise. A very subtle listening exercise. Normally, when I teach listening in martial energetics, normally and by listening, I mean sensing through touch.
Yeah.
So that's for our listeners who might not be in on the jargon. Listening means sensing through
Yeah.
touch. So listening is a concept in Wing Chun, in sticky hands, or Chi Sao, which is what I would call a form of Chi Sao. And the version they did was very sensitive. You would actually just touch the tip of somebody's finger with the back of your hand very, very lightly, and have your eyes closed. And it didn't mean a lot to me then, but looking back on it now, I remember it, and I guess I must have been influenced by it, and I've kind of brought that forward into what I do, and really, as far as the that specific exercise and the emphasis on sensitivity being one of the primary qualities. So even though it didn't sink in at the time, it did kind of work its way in over time.
Okay, cool, man. All right, so yeah, you were in college, so you did capoeira for 3 years. Then you took one Tai Chi class. So okay, what year is it, and what's going on?
Well, so there was actually a pretty big transition when I graduated from college and went to graduate school. I graduated from college in Arkansas, went to graduate school in San Diego. I majored in math and physics, and that is a big part of my background. It's a big part of what I bring into martial energetics.
Yeah, you gotta understand the fundamentals. Fundamentals of the universe, math and physics.
Yeah,
you understand
exactly.
that. You understand how everything works if you understand math.
It's about as fundamental as you can get, right?
Yeah.
And but I went to the college I went to was a liberal arts school, and so you study kind of some of everything. And there was one other significant thing that happened there, which was I took a class in Buddhism. It turned out to be significant later, which I'll get to. But I took a class in Buddhism, and it was just an interesting theoretical exercise. I actually grew up as an atheist in the Bible Belt, a rational empiricist atheist in the Bible Belt. And
good job, man. It's tough to do. A lot of people have a lot of trouble doing that. So good job.
I think I was just a born contrarian in a lot of ways. So for me, it was just what came naturally.
Yeah, same for me.
But martial arts was certainly not a spiritual pursuit for me. And I didn't really have anything I would consider to be a spirituality. But this was an interesting theoretical exercise. I learned about the concept of Satori and the story of the Buddha, or of Gautama, sits under the ficus tree, and then Satori happens, and the Buddha stands up, and
I love that. That's
and it was it was interesting because of the connection with Oriental culture and martial arts. So it was, I had to take a religion class, and that was one I chose. And it ended up coming back for me later in a big way. When I moved, transitioning from college to graduate school, I went to graduate school in applied physics at San Diego State. And when I got there, I was on the lookout for martial arts schools. And I saw a flyer somewhere in North Park. I think it might have been at Rancho's, which used to be a natural food store that was there a long time ago, for the Kung Fu Academy. And I was like, okay, cool, Kung Fu, that sounds good. I'll see what that's about. Maybe it'll be something new I haven't learned already. And that school was a school that operated in North Park for many years. It was Rich Robson's school. Okay. And I went there, tried it out. It was cool. And I signed up and started doing it. And I went.
So what would you do that day? What's the style? What's going on? Like what attracted you to actually sign up? Because I've gone to so many free trials, I can't remember them all, but I didn't sign up for most of the time. Yeah. So what was the thing that I like this?
Well, looking back, I think I could. It was probably synchronicity in the universe, laying my path out
No.
for me. But what I noticed was, I had studied different styles, but nothing that was really called kung fu. Still seemed exotic to me. I mean, I'd done Wing Chun,
Mm.
um, but like kung fu, what's that? That's something
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what kung
So
fu is,
that
but
stuff you saw when you
maybe
were a
this is
kid watching martial arts movies.
I mean, I knew kung fu meant Chinese martial arts, but
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
this is something I haven't done yet. Um, and it was pretty new and interesting, and um, I went because I was thinking it was a martial arts school. I was thinking I was going to learn martial arts, and up to that point, everything I had done was what I would classify as external,
Mm.
um, and I didn't realize this was an internal martial arts school. I wasn't going to learn Tai Chi. I, I, I wouldn't have gone if I saw like the Tai Chi Academy on the flyer.
Ah, I see.
But it turns out he did teach internal martial arts, and and incorporated principles from the Tai Chi classics. And I kind of started learning internal principles in a way that resonated, that fit with me, that was in the context of martial arts. So it was it really opened up just a lot of new areas for me, and it was different than anything that I'd done before. With the styles that he actually taught were what were displayed on the school's logo were uh, Bok Fu Pai and Sansu. And he essentially came from a lineage in both of these styles. And I usually don't bother mentioning Bok Fu Pai or Sansu because almost nobody's heard of them. Um, but Bok Fu Pai is an internal style uh,
Mm-hmm.
from China, and Sansu is it's Sansu is different than any other martial art. There's really nothing to compare it to. Um, but it's essentially, I guess it's sort of the prototype for reality-based self-defense, if I had to
Okay.
put it
Okay.
in a nutshell. It's sort of the prototype for pretty much all reality-based self-defense.
It's like
um
a no form martial art.
uh yeah, that's accurate, but there are
Uh-huh.
other martial arts that could also be described that
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
but I
Wu
wouldn't
style Tai
compare to
Chi.
Sansu. um
Yeah.
and so um, what happened after about
Mm-hmm.
6 months at this school uh, was was something really profound. One thing that I started doing is I started just training all the time, and I learned how to do qigong. I would just all the time be doing qigong and working with my body, and it was still a physical practice for me. But that was definitely tuning into more and more sensations. And then what happened one night when I was in my room training as usual, and um, one of the things that helped to bring this about was the assistance of cannabis. This was the time in my life when I started using cannabis around
Mm-hmm.
that time, and that was definitely um, a catalyzing factor.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with I've done a lot of work with plant medicines since then, and this was kind of
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of my shamanic path in that way too. So that was one factor that helped catalyze, but it was really a convergence of just where I was in my life, um, and everything in the universe. This one particular moment, I was training in my room doing qigong in the evening, and then all of a sudden something changed.
Mm, okay.
Actually, all of a sudden everything changed. Everything changed. And at the
Okay.
same time, Nothing changed. Everything was exactly the same.
Yes.
But there was a very distinct moment that I recognized, and I thought back to my Buddhism class in college where I learned about Satori,
Mm.
and I went, "Oh, that's what that was. That's what they were talking about. That what just happened. That's what that is." And this all I can think of to say more about that right now is it's just something that if it's happened to you, you know it. um, if it hasn't happened to you, it's just an idea. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
You got to be on the other side of the idea before you can understand what the idea really is.
but there was a distinct shift in my mode of
Mhm.
perception and uh, and being, and the since then I've studied the phenomenon more, and there's kind of a general consensus that there's three stages. There's the instantaneous awakening, which is instantaneous, and then there's the peak state, which is transient, and then there's the residual um, awareness that never
Mm.
can completely go away.
It's the
Um,
gong, the
it's sort of like
and the ripple forever.
it's sort of like after having seen something, you can't unsee it. And one thing I one thing that I do to give my to give students a taste of this experience
Mhm.
is ask them, can you see your nose right now? And
Yeah.
often people will say no, they can't see their nose. And I
Mhm.
say, are you
Mhm.
sure? Look, do you
Look
look
closer.
right there. And then they'll realize their nose actually is visible there in their peripheral vision, and
Mhm.
it was there all along. They realized that, oh, I've been
Mhm.
seeing this the whole time.
That's a great one. I've never heard that. That's a great point.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that. You once you like you're not aware of it until somehow you see it. It gets pointed out to you, or you notice it, or whatever, and then you realize it was always there, and you can never unsee
Yeah.
it. So the for me the there was the instantaneous realization, and then there was the peak state, which lasted for about 3 months, which is a long time, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good run, and it was a lot like that movie Limitless.
Mm.
You've seen the one where you take the pill and it unlocks your brain's whole
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah.
It was like that for about 3 months. It was also, but it was interesting. It was also like being an infant. It was like being a newborn and completely relearning everything about my body, about how to move, how to breathe, how to stand, how to
Mhm.
how to
Mhm.
communicate with people. It was a type of rebirth, a type of infancy. And
Yeah.
what was happening with my martial arts at this time was training in the internal practices at the Kung Fu Academy with Rich Robson. I started to develop my sensitivity for physical sensations, and when this perceptual shift happened, I became aware of energetic sensations. So I also had another realization at the same time: is, oh, that's what chi is. I felt my chi. Hey, everybody, I felt my chi. I know what chi is now. And um, and that was something that came to my awareness, and the and so I got I pursued my practice even more intensely. I was training typically um, 3 hours a day in the dojo, 5 days a week, and plus I don't know how much time outside the dojo, but frequently and often.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because it was addictive, it was just it
She
was
is addictive. Yes,
Yeah,
you're very right.
addictive in a very good
Once
way.
you get a taste, you just have to keep coming back, and you want to train more and train more and train
And
more
just like, why ever
every
turn
day.
it off? Like,
Yeah,
I was like, why turn it off at all? Just keep
yeah,
it on all the time.
and you have
So,
to keep it on.
um, and a very interesting thing happened with my martial arts. I say this to the point where everything came together, and I kind of realized that all the martial arts I'd been doing previously, I'd actually been studying Tai Chi all along and hadn't realized it, in the sense that Tai Chi is
Hmm.
the study of fundamental universal principles of
Yep.
physics and physiology. And I'd just
Hmm.
been studying different aspects of that. But
That's right. That's right.
I I compare my situation to being like a novice craftsperson who collects a bunch of tools, or like somebody who's really into a sport and buys all the gear, but they can't even qualify for an amateur league team because they just don't have the skills to use it. You know, you can buy all the tools in the world you want. You can buy the best gear you want, but it doesn't make you a master crafts person.
Yeah, yeah. Having the best tool it gets you only like after you get to the 90% mark where you can handle the 90% that tool that's worthy of a man who's ready for that 95%,
And
the 98%. You
well,
can't get there until you're ready.
yeah, and what I mean by tools is like techniques.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
styles and techniques and forms. Like
Hmm.
I learned how to do a really good sidekick in Taekwondo,
Hmm.
but I didn't know how to use it. Like
Oh, okay. Okay.
I couldn't do anything to anybody with
All
any
right,
of this stuff.
hold on. I got to back up for a second. Okay, you learned a sidekick in Taekwondo, of course. You learned the
Yeah.
rounds, all that stuff, and you did your sparring, and you hit people, and you would knock them down. You learned how to hit. You learned
No,
how to.
no,
Okay.
no. Sparring is like playing tag. You don't hit people and knock them down.
Oh, the way you guys did it. Okay. Yeah, I came
Uh,
from Kyokushin. The whole point is to knock that guy to the ground. Hit him so hard he falls over. That's what you're
yeah.
trying to do.
Well, see, I mean, in order to develop that, have to put hands on people and experience actually doing
Hmm.
it. And I say I had all these tools. I could do techniques really good. I could do a lot of techniques. I was really good at techniques. I could just watch somebody, see somebody do something once, and then do it almost exactly the same way
Hmm.
the next time. Like
Hmm.
I was really good at body mimicry.
You're a sponge. A
For
sponge.
in for that at least. But
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything to anybody, and I still. I mean, I was very ineffective, and on some level, I knew it, and I was hoping that getting in better shape and learning more techniques and learning the next level of the form it would fix that, but it never did. You know, years went by, and I gathered more techniques and tools, but it never fixed that problem. And on some level, I knew it, and I still had this fear that if somebody bigger and stronger than me uh, wanted to do something to me, I wouldn't be able to stop them.
Hmm.
And in one sense, I could do a lot of things, but I really could not actually handle my own body. I had no idea how to actually handle even my own body, let alone somebody else's.
Hmm. Hmm.
But with this shift in perceptual modes, all of that stuff started to come together, and I gained actual use of my body. I could actually learn how to operate the thing properly.
This whole time, if only someone had given me an owner's manual.
Right. And well, it actually didn't come in the form of a manual. It wasn't something I was taught. It was something that I
Yeah.
discovered
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
paying attention and bringing my consciousness into my body and feeling, but through sensitivity and experimentation. And I mean, Rich pointed some things out to me, and I started playing with them, and just whole realms of experience unfolded from that. And
Hmm.
so I gained access to all of the abilities that I had been developing. It was like I was developing these abilities, but I didn't have access to them. And all of a sudden, I gained
Hmm.
access to the abilities I'd been developing, and I I learned how to actually fight. I learned how to actually handle another body, and I made it was kind of like I made about 10 years worth of progress in 2 years, but it was more like a deferred progress that kind of became available to me. Before that, I had 10 years of training and very little progress, at least on the surface. And or I guess it was more accurate to say there was progress on the surface, but not really at the core. And then I sort of brought that progress to a very fundamental level, and
you reset
it would have. I mean, if you had looked at it, from over a period of about 2 years that I was training there full time, it looked like I came very far very fast, but actually it was kind of like activating stuff that I'd been building in all along, building the foundation for, without really having the key to unlock it. And what happened with my practice at that time was it became self-sustainable or self-sustaining. And this is a term that I use for the point, really the point of all training is that anytime I work with anybody, the point is to get them to self-sustaining, which is the basic distinction of that is when you start out learning martial arts, learning anything really, you have to learn from somebody.
Yes.
I don't mean to make that an absolute statement. There's things you can learn on your own, of course, but there's in kind of a fuzzy way, you have to learn from somebody. You have to learn the art or the style or the skill from someone. At least you can. There's a lot of things that you can learn very fast, much faster, if you have someone to point them out to you. And
yes,
you have to have a teacher in order to learn, in order to progress.
Yes.
When a person's practice becomes self-sustaining, it's just something that they do as part of who they are, as part of their life, and you no longer have to have a teacher to learn. You are directing your own learning. And you no longer have to have a particular teacher, for sure, which means that you can learn from anyone. You can certainly learn from any teacher, but you're at choice about it. You get to choose who you learn from and what you want to learn, and you don't need a particular teacher. You don't need a master or a guru to direct your practice. You're a self-directed organism at that point, and that was when that transition happened for me, and martial arts moved from being just a passion to really a discipline for me at that point. And that's also when I started teaching, and since then I've visited many schools. I've learned from many teachers and many sources, which is what I recommend everybody to do. Learn as much as you can from as many teachers as you can. But
totally agree.
But it's always been a self-directed pursuit, and I've been kind of aggregating this knowledge and collecting. And everybody has their own style of kung fu. Whether you, even if you're trying as hard as you can to imitate.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's even, like some styles are more style dependent than others. Like most styles of Tai Chi are very like you're supposed to do it exactly this way because this is how we've always done it. But it's always going to.
That's why it's called tradition.
Right.
Traditional.
It's always going to be your own kung fu. It's always going to be your Tai Chi. And if you the best you can hope to get by trying to copy somebody is to be an imperfect copy of somebody else. But the good news is you are you regardless, whether you realize it or not. It's your kung fu, it's your Tai Chi. And
yes.
Just how I'm put together, I was a very left-brained individual, which is like the rational analytical part of the brain, to speak very loosely.
The mathematical physicist kind of part of the brain, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, all that stuff. The rational, empirical atheist, and that sort of thing. But at this point in my life, my the other side, the intuitive sensing awareness, it came online, and I became much more balanced in that way. And I I developed what could be called a spiritual awareness, and I don't know. There's something else I was going to say about that. The left brain, right
All
brain
right. Well,
thing.
let's reset a little bit. So you were very much left-brained most of your life, and then you found Tai Chi and internal martial arts. You had Satori.
Oh yes. Okay. I remember now.
And then you switch, and you became more artful, more passionate, more emotional. Okay.
So I've always had a very organized sort of brain, and it's in my nature to take an organized, systematic approach to things. So in my practice, in my journey, that's part of what I've been doing as I have gone along, is just been approaching, even before I realized it, I was working towards this, approaching a consistent and complete systematic mode of organization of all of this knowledge that I had been accumulating, of everything that kind of fits in the realm, in the universe of martial arts. Like, because martial arts is all over the place. It's not just one thing. It's so many things. It's so different. But my brain was actually working as I was going along on a kind of a unified theory of martial arts. And so that's how my path culminated in martial energetics, and eventually crystallized in that form. So that is,
it took 36 years to reach here.
Yeah, and at least in this body. And that's and since creating that initial kind of framework, it's I've gone on to just bring as much knowledge as I can into it and integrate it and refine it so that it's more and more complete and consistent. And it seems to have arrived at a stable point where so far I haven't seen anything in martial arts that does not have an explanation in this system. If there is anything, I'd love to see it. I'm very open-minded, but everything that I've seen so far, I've been able to sort of incorporate into this framework, and that's the sense in which I mean that it's stable, it's complete and consistent, and seems to be a universal basis for treating the whole topic of martial arts.
Well, like you said, Tai Chi covers everything. It encapsulates all martial arts because it is from the most foundational form, meditation, and the most foundational motion, Qigong.
Well, I would agree with that. Certainly, using Tai Chi the way I use it, and in the way we're actually using it, Tai Chi, not Tai Chi Chuan. Tai Chi means the grand ultimate, everything. Basically, it just means everything, the entire everything.
The extremes, the great extremes of the universe.
So if and certainly from a philosophical perspective, Tai Chi incorporates everything. From a traditional stylistic perspective, it actually gets quite narrow.
Yes.
But yeah, that was the spirit of what I recognize as the philosophy of Tai Chi when I had this when I underwent this perceptual shift, which actually reminds me of another interesting phenomena that happened in conjunction with this, was related with the Tao Te Ching, which I know you know what it is. For our listeners who don't know what it is, the Tao Te Ching is a very ancient Chinese text, in my opinion, the most profound, concise compilation of human wisdom ever recorded in 81 short verses. It's the source of the spiritual philosophy of Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
my
it's the explanation of that.
it's
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 not the
it's
source. The source is the source, and then the Tao Te
right,
Ching is
right.
the
It's
book explaining that.
yeah. It's not the source itself, but it's the source of the literature and philosophy and body of
Yeah.
communication. It's
Dao ke Dao, Fei Chang Dao, Ming ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming.
which is
You know
for
that?
our
Oh, that's
non-Chinese speakers.
Chinese.
Is
The
that passage
first
one?
two verses, yeah. In China, yeah. I started reading the Tao Te Ching in its original Chinese, and it's really hard. But
Yeah.
but the
Well,
first two verses are really beautiful, and the translation is like nothing close to their literal translation, which
yeah.
is
Well,
really interesting. And that was one of the
that's
things that interested me in that book.
that's a really amazing feat in and of itself, because that would be hard for a native Chinese speaker,
Mm.
because it's such the original version is a much older version
Well,
of
I'm reading the
Chinese.
modernized written of it, yes, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
you're
okay,
right. Yeah,
okay.
it's
So
still
it's
simplified, man.
okay, okay. Um, so my perspective on it is that Tai Chi, I mean, Tai Chi, the philosophy, is essentially Taoism, and
Mm.
Tai Chi Chuan, the practice of Tai Chi, the physical practice, is the physical instantiation of Taoism. So people ask me if I have religion or something, uh, or do you believe in God?
Yeah,
I'm a practicing Taoist.
sure.
um,
Nonchalant atheist.
well, I. I,
Just
I
chill.
I
Hey,
mean, if somebody asked me, "Are you an atheist?" I would say I'm a practicing Taoist. That's, I mean,
yeah.
uh,
But then they don't know what that means because you didn't
well,
answer the atheist question.
that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of the point, is that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would be inaccurate for me
They
to
have to go look at what Taoism is.
it would be inaccurate for me
Say,
to
yeah, I'm just an atheist. Yeah.
it would be inaccurate for me to place
Uh-oh.
myself in that
All right.
dichotomy.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened
I
with the
want
Tao Te
to ask
Ching?
one last question.
What happened
So
with the Tao Te
finish your
Ching
thought, and then let's see that.
was that
Yeah.
I'd actually I'd actually I'd actually read this book when I was about 13.
Okay.
There was a copy sitting around my house, and it just didn't make any sense. Just a bunch of gobbledygook. I couldn't make heads or tails
It
of
is. No,
it.
it totally is.
Well, it is, yeah. But then for some reason, I was compelled to pick up a copy of it and read it after this experience happened, and
Mm.
it came through with perfect crystal clarity, like direct mind-to-mind transmission. I felt like I was sitting
Mm.
in the same room
Mhm.
with whatever person, being, open source collaborative effort
The writer.
channeled
Yeah.
that work, and having just a face-to-face conversation, or more like a Vulcan mind meld, actually. The
Okay. Okay.
best comparison. So that was how I realized, oh, I'm a Taoist. I didn't know that. Cool. Not a decision, but more just like a realization that, okay, this is an accurate description that applies to me.
Mm. Cool. Okay. So last question. Why should anyone study martial arts?
That's a great question, because
1 minute. That's all you get. 1 minute. You got to answer.
because people
Go.
have that's a great question, because people have lots of reasons for studying martial arts, and there are lots of great reasons to study martial arts. Fundamentally, because you want to is all the reason you need. But what I do think is important, there's lots of reasons, and none of them are necessarily good or bad or right or wrong or better or worse. But what I do think is important is to be aware of why one is studying martial arts, and to study and practice in a way that is applicable and appropriate for that purpose, for that intention. In other words, martial arts could be psychotherapy. That's fine, as long as you recognize that you're doing it for psychotherapy. You're conscious about that. Martial arts could be for self-defense. That's fine, as long as you are conscious that that's what you're doing it for and you train appropriately. Martial arts could be for health and wellness, spiritual development, performance enhancement, community, culture and tradition, art, expression. They're all great reasons. And as long as you are conscious and aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think that's the most important approach, the important component of whatever your approach is.
Okay, cool, man. All right. Well, this has been the first episode of Martial Energetics Podcast. I'm Andrew Brown, and this has been Dane Dormio. Thanks for coming out, Dane.
Yeah, it was great talking with you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Definitely. I really want to do an episode on like Satori and like all the different ideas and ways people explain what the hell Satori even means. But because if you don't know it, like you said, if you've never experienced it, well, it's just this weird wispy idea. It's like a dream. You're like, okay, yeah, Satori, sure, man.
That is a good idea. We can record that in our notes for a future episode. Why don't we talk about next time? Why don't we talk about martial energetics as a system and kind of how it fits together and
good idea.
What it is.
We shall do that. All right. Next time, martial energetics and what is martial energetics. All right. You have a good night, Dane. You have a good night, audience. I love you.
Look forward to it. Yeah. Right, same here. Good talking with you, Andrew. I look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. We're all done. Have a good night.
Bye.